1. Race officer speaking.
Pressure coming here, pressure coming.
We're 1.5 below.
2 dives here, boys.
We're looking at 10.5 to 42.
Welcome, podcast listeners, to another edition of my sailing podcast. Thank you so much for listening in. And before we get things underway this month, a big thank you for all your comments on last month's pod. Many of you loved listening to Sir Robin. If you haven't tuned in, give him a listen. And if you've got in touch, liked, commented, or subscribed, as ever, thank you. It really is much appreciated. So, what have we got for you this month? Well, right now, the eyes of the sailing world should all be focused on Tokyo. We should all be out enjoying the drama of the Olympic racecourse. But alas, the postponement of the Games means we will all have to wait another year. So to fill that Olympic void, we thought we'd track down a bunch of Olympic athletes, past and present, to tell you their very own unique Olympic stories. Tears have been shed making this podcast on more than one occasion. It's been emotional, but we've sat down with 6 sailing medalists, between them boasting a total of 12 Olympic medals, 7 golds in total. So we've got quite an accomplished lineup. To make all that happen, we've done something new for this podcast. It's been with a slight reluctance, but we've entered the world of the remote interview. It's meant we've been able to talk to athletes from all over the planet. It's not perfect. I'm a much bigger fan of sitting down on a sofa for a long face-to-face chat. And passionate about sound quality as we are, the technical department has had his moments. But the stories we have lined up for you are compelling and offer a real insight into the world of Olympic sailing. Before we get underway, we'd like to note that an Olympic sailing podcast without the world's most decorated Olympic sailor does, of course, carry a serious omission. But it was only 2 months ago that Sir Ben Ainslie shared his Olympic journey with us. So if Olympic sailing's your thing, perhaps give Ben a listen once you've done here. His stories of duels out on the Olympic racecourse are fascinating. So who have we got lined up for this month? Well, in part 2, we have the emotional story of my favourite Olympic medalist of all time, Argentinian nacre sailor Santi Langer, telling us the remarkable story of how he beat cancer to win gold in Rio. We hear from Lynn Jewel Shore, a massive inspiration to me growing up, as the first ever gold medalist in a women-specific class at the Games. And we talk to America's Cup winning Rio gold medalist Blair Took on how he balances Olympic and Cup campaigns and how the postponement until next year will affect his Olympic build-up. And in this part, British 470 helm Hannah Mills tells us all about how a silver medal at her home games in 2012 fueled the fire that led to gold 4 years later. We talk to Olympic sailing royalty as Rodney Pattisson gives us a glimpse of life in the amateur Olympic fleets of the 1960s and 70s. But we kick things off with the Olympic journey of one of modern sailing's most accomplished competitors, Australian sailing superstar Tom Slingsby. These pods are slightly longer than normal to try and fill the void of the hours of viewing that Olympic sailing always brings. And we've added chapter markers so you can take them in one interview at a time. But however you listen, I do hope you enjoy the time I spent with the sailing Olympians.
We're going to forget about this in the future and I'm going to win an Olympic gold medal and I'm not going to stop until I do it. Day 1 of the Olympics when it started, I didn't have a chance. I didn't go there to get a silver medal or a bronze medal. There's only one medal I would have accepted.
Our first interview tells an Olympic story not too dissimilar to my own, and that as a hopeful young athlete, he headed to an Olympic Games with big hopes of a medal and failed. And it was that bitter disappointment that then helped generate the drive and determination needed to succeed. Many of you will know that I competed at 4 Olympic Games. My first as a wide-eyed youngster, but it was at my second Games in Atlanta that saw me in with a real medal shot. As the regatta progressed, I'd sailed into contention, but in the final days, it all slipped away. I finished 4th. The feeling was unimaginable. 4 years later in Sydney, I was a different athlete. I was confident, well-resourced, and in a team full of inspirational teammates. The regatta went well. Things were going my way. But with 2 races to go, I had this terrible feeling of Olympic déjà vu. It was a feeling you're about to hear all about from Tom Slingsby. What if this was a repeat of what had happened last time around? Getting so close, but it's just not my time. In the penultimate race, I struggled, finished way down the fleet. I thought I'd blown it. With 1 race left to make amends, a game-changing pep talk from my coach Mark Littlejohn put me back on track. I hit reset. I was back. 1 race between me and a gold medal. And I sailed to the win. My first Olympic podium, due in no small part to my quick-thinking coach. That awful feeling of dread is no stranger to our first guest. His honest retelling of his personal search for Olympic success is emotional, but it's also a great place to kick things off. Because what I didn't know back in 2000 in Sydney Harbour was that sitting on the foreshore was a 15-year-old tennis player with a passion for sailing. He was there to watch the laser fleet, those magnificent races that Ben Ainsley discussed with us a while back. And while I was fighting my inner demons out on the water, the young Tom Slingsby was making some tricky choices of his own. The loser was tennis, as Tom resolved to devote his life to winning an Olympic medal. It's a great story. We caught up with Tom while he was at home in Sydney. Hi Tom, thanks for joining us. It's good to get you on the podcast. I hear you're a bit of a fan.
I am a fan. I started a little bit late in getting into the podcast, but now I love it. I listen to every episode, and it's amazing. There's been some really cool stories over the days from a lot of my friends, and it's really cool sort of going back down memory lane, listening to a few of their versions of the story.
Well, as you know, we're putting together an Olympic podcast, but we must get you back at some stage for a longer sit down. There's a lot to talk about, but for now, we're looking at the Olympics. So tell me, Tom, growing up just north of Sydney, what are your earliest Olympic memories? I mean, you'd have been, I guess, in your teens maybe when the Games were in Sydney.
I think I was 15 years old, and obviously Australia's a huge sporting country and loved watching the Olympics on TV. But I've got to say, I didn't really have any Olympic aspirations until the Olympics came to Australia. I was a tennis player through my youth, and I guess the Olympics wasn't big on the radar for tennis players then. But then watching the Olympics in Australia, and I still remember it to this day. I used to go down, and I just started sailing lasers. I was about 15 years old. I was getting interested in it and getting better. And I went down and went on to cheer Michael Blackburn every day from the rocks on Sydney Harbour. You didn't have to pay for tickets. You could just go down and sit on the rocks and watch the racing. I went down pretty much every day that the lasers raced, and was cheering on Michael against Ben Ainsley and Robertson. But he amazingly got a bronze medal in front of his home crowd, and right then and there, I still remember it. I said I want to win a gold medal for Australia in the laser class as well, and I just said I wanted to do that. I love the lasers, and I wanted to go one better than what Michael was able to achieve.
I mean, I raced obviously in the Europe on the same course as the lasers, and you could hear the people screaming. I mean, you were so close to the spectators. I don't think there'll ever be, such a perfect venue for sailboat racing in the Olympics.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, on Bradley's Head, I still remember all the boats coming in, and I'd be right down on the rocks. I think being a bit younger, I was allowed to sort of walk to the front of everyone and sit on the rocks. And I still remember yourself coming in and tacking right next to me, and whoever I was with, I'm not too sure I was with. They're like, oh, she's going to win the Europe class, and Sarah Blank's got a shot. She's in fourth, and so it was. Yeah, I still remember those days really well. I guess they're really a turning point for me in my career and life. If we didn't have the Sydney Olympics here in Australia and I didn't go watch it, I wouldn't have set myself a goal. I want to be an Olympian and I want to and do it. So yeah, those were amazing times. Unfortunately, I remember them really well.
Do you think that's where, I guess, part of the drive came to compete at the highest level?
Yeah, I think so. It's one of those things, that competitive spirit, I guess, that you're either really born with or you're not. And it's some people can pick it up over the years, but it's really interesting listening to your podcast, and you listen to Ben Ainsley and Ian Percy and these guys, Jimmy Spithill, behind sort of the media personality. They've all got this, and we call it mongrel in Australia, where you just will do anything to win and you won't stop. And no matter what the physical barrier or mental barrier it is, you're going to just keep pushing until you can't go anymore. And I was born with that. It's really interesting listening to these podcasts, because I just sit there and just go, I know what you're saying. Like when Ben Ainsley talks, he says, oh, you might not understand, but I was really angry and I just had to beat this guy. I focused on that guy, and he was everything to me, and I wanted to beat him. And I know exactly what he's talking about. It's because it's built into myself as well. And so when I was young playing tennis, I had a really bad temper. I wanted to win so badly, and when I'd lose my temper. But I can't stop it. Even to this day, you see it on a Sail GP boat when you've got 12 different camera angles on you. When you make a mistake, everyone's. I can't hold my emotions in. I'm one of those people that I sort of have everything on my sleeve, and everyone sees how I am, even no matter how hard I try. It's just competitive spirit. It comes out in a lot of different ways.
Tom, your first shot came in China, in the laser, of course, and you'd won the Worlds in Portugal the year before. You were fourth in the test event. How confident were you going into your first Olympics?
I was extremely confident. I think I was fourth in the test event, but I sort of thought that I was better than that, and I had won the two previous world titles in the lead up. It sort of felt that I had a very tough Olympic trials against Michael Blackburn, who beat me in 2004, and in 2008 we sort of went 1-2 every 2007 1-2 in every trial event, and I was able to come out on top in that. And then I sort of felt that was my biggest hurdle, and I'd gotten over that to beat Michael Blackburn, and so then I was like, okay, well now I've got the Olympics, but I can do it because I beat Blackburn. And I was confident as soon as I focused my time and energy on China and the light airs and the current, that I'll be able to overcome it. And I lost a lot of weight. I just thought that, I honestly thought that it was going to be so, I could come fourth at 84 kilos in the test event. And then when I went to the Olympics, I was about 73, 74. So I was 10 kilos lighter. And I thought, okay, well, if I was fourth then, I'm going to be hard to stop now. But what happens when you lose a lot of weight and you're not well, you're sick all the time. I got glandular fever. But my biggest problem was I lost too much weight and I mentally was not there. And the results showed.
I mean, you really struggled at the event, didn't you think? 22nd overall. I mean, after such a promising build-up, you know, when you look back, I bet it's still hard to look back on.
It is really hard because, it's really hard to look back on because you only get a couple of Olympic chances in your life. And in the trials in 2004, I finished seventh in those world titles, but Michael Blackburn beat me there, and so like that one sort of slipped between my fingers when I was a good up and coming chance, and then I went to the Olympics in 2008 as the favourite, and I sort of had it there. And to let an opportunity at the Olympics slip is tough, because we all know you only get a couple of them if you're very lucky. I got a few chances, and it was heartbreaking. I again, one of those things, because it's something that sort of changed my life. I can remember it so well. I still remember coming into the finish line after day one, and I had a 21 and a 22, and coming over the finish line in the 22nd, and I'm just like, I was heartbroken there already, but I was like, okay, you can turn this around. Let's get going. And then day two, I had a 21, 22, exactly the same results. This is weird, out of a 45 boat fleet in the laser class. And I had already established where I was. And and then I was like, okay, mathematically, I can still come back. If I start knocking out my top fives, I can still get a bronze medal or something like that. And day three, I think I had a 22 dead last, 45. And that was it. China for me, I don't have fond memories of it at all, just because I went there to win. And even if I got told the day before the event started, we'll give you a silver medal now, would you take it? I would have said no, 100%. I was that focused on gold, and that was the same way in my following Olympic campaigns after that.
Goodness, I mean, I can't, physically, obviously, you were in bad shape, but I guess as the event went on, mentally, it just got harder and harder. Yeah,
I lost. My mental state wasn't there, and when you've got a problem, you're not going too quick in the boat, and you've got to problem solve. What is it? Is it sail setup? Is it technique? Is it wind on the water? You just don't function. And I was sitting there, and I would just look at the problem blindly and just put my hands up. I couldn't solve simple issues. And so I lost too much weight at the end of the day, and my body, I was able to do it, but I should have listened to the doctors at 5 kilos earlier. And I think if I went there at 78 kilos and listened to the doctors and stayed at that weight, I wouldn't have gotten as sick, and I would have been able to mentally be a lot more there, and might not have beaten Paul Goodison. There's a high chance, because he was so good in those conditions, but would have had a very good shot at a medal, I think. But in hindsight, when day one of the Olympics, when it started, I didn't have a chance. I didn't know it yet, but mentally, I really couldn't compete.
How difficult was life post games? I mean, I guess we all go through this sort of post-Olympic struggle. I've certainly been there myself. But how did you feel coming back from Qingdao with a finish so far off the podium?
Yeah, I said it before, but I was heartbroken. It was really tough. Another thing that what happened in the lead up was 2 months before the Olympics, a girlfriend I'd been with for a while, we broke up just because I'm not there. I'm not thinking clearly, all different things like that. So you break up with your long-time girlfriend, and then but I had the Olympic focus, and so I was sort of in the zone. I was distracted, and then you finish, and you had a terrible result. You don't have a girlfriend anymore, and for me, I'd won every other event in Olympic sailing, worlds, all the World Cup events, the Europeans, and then I had to sit there and say, okay, I've got to wait 4 years to win the one event that I haven't won. And as a 22-year-old kid, 4 years is a lifetime. So I was a bit sort of in shock. I remember we had this get together with the Australian sailing team at Hamilton Island after. They were a big sponsor of ours. It was at that function. I've never done this. Everyone knows me. I'm quite shy. I like to keep to myself. But I made an impromptu speech, and I don't like speeches at all, in front of all our sponsors, families, and team. And I just said, look, a lot of people have come up and they sort of feel sorry for me and all this, but look, I'm not going to stop at this, and we're going to forget about this in the future, and I'm going to win an Olympic gold medal, and I'm not going to stop until I do it. When I was 15 years old, when I decided I wanted to go to the Olympics, I wrote the path down. I had to win my club championship. I had to win the state titles, the metropolitan titles. Then I was going to move to an Australian, had to win the Australians, win a world title, and I had the whole list. And every time I'd do one, I'd tick it off my wall. So goal setting is huge for me. And when I said I had to win a gold medal, I still hadn't ticked that one off on that piece of paper. So I knew I had to come back. And then when I started at the Olympic venue in Weymouth in 2009, I said, this is a venue that's perfect for me. Windy, shifty, offshore, onshore, all sorts of conditions. I said, I love this venue. And I knew then and there that, okay, I'm going to do everything right for this campaign and leave no stone unturned.
With hindsight, in my own Olympic career, I think my fourth place finish in Atlanta was really the fuel I needed to push me through to win in Sydney. And I guess, I mean, I really believe now if I hadn't finished fourth then, I probably wouldn't have won in Sydney. I mean, how much motivation did the result in China give you as you pushed forward to London?
It was unbelievable amount. It sort of, I think of myself back then, and I just think I was so driven, like scarily driven, and systematically with Michael Blackburn, we went through every one of my weaknesses and fixed all my problems, and so I think with my with my sort of raw talent and Michael's professionalism, it put me in such a position leading into London that I was confident in a different way. I think in 2008 I was confident because I was a young, cocky kid and had been beating everyone, and I was confident that way. But when I went into London in 2012, I wanted to mentally show my competitors that you're not going to stay with me. I'm doing my thing, and you can't keep up. And that was something I always tried to do. And leading into the Olympics, I knew that I wanted to be dominant, and it was very important to me to do that. And then, but it did for sure. Day one of the Olympics in 2012, it felt a lot like deja vu. Everything's here again, and I had to, because I was heartbroken after 2008, and I was sitting here doing all these media interviews saying how you're the favourite, what are you going to do differently this time? And I really had to block it out and just say, look, I'm a completely different person. I didn't say this in the interviews. I would just say, I'm going to do my best and see how I go. But personally, I really had to tell myself, you're a completely different sailor, different person, and it's going to be a totally different result. And I had to actually get myself to believe that, which can be tough at times.
How well do you remember the regatta itself, Tom? I mean, you got a pretty good start, didn't you? I think a second, a first and a second, and then it all got a little bit sketchy.
Yeah, I remember it like it was yesterday. One of those things that you don't forget. I remember day one was huge for me. I had a 2 and a 1, and that just settled myself, because I had all these questions coming in, and if I went out and had a 22, 21, I would have lost my mind, sort of thing. So to go out and settle everything and have a second and a first on day one, I was like, okay, it's not Beijing. They're up against someone completely different now. And then, sure enough, my results started tapering off. I started just making a few mistakes through the middle of the regatta. I was like making a few errors that I shouldn't have. And Pavlos Kontitos, who's a Cyprus sailor, who he takes risk. He's not afraid of leverage against a fleet. If he thinks the wind's going right, he's gonna back himself against the whole fleet. And when he's on, he's really on. So the regatta starts going on. I've got a nice lead, and he's starting to come back at me, and I keep thinking, oh, look, he's a high-risk sailor. He's not going to be able to keep posting these good results. He's going to make a mistake here soon. Those mistakes weren't happening. I was making a few more mistakes. He sort of ground down my lead, and then I don't know what day it was, maybe 3 or 4. Sure enough, I think I had a 7 and a 15 or something like that, and he had some good results, and he overtook me. And that was big for me. I sort of mentally, there was a huge hurdle going on there. I was like, as I said, I didn't go there to get a medal, a silver medal or a bronze medal. There's only one medal I would have accepted, really. It's just something that's built into me. You go there to win, not to be the second best. So, and I think we did a race on the North course, and I had a 15th. Pavlos overtook me. They moved us into the Harbour Inshore course for the second race, and I got away okay, but I remember I started really well that race. For the rest of the race, I came through. I think I finished second in the next race, and there's a photo of me going across the line when I finished second, and it looks like I've just won the gold medal. I was banging the deck and screaming, and people don't know about that one. I think that was race 8 or something like that, and people don't really know the story behind that, because when I was banging the deck and screaming for this second place, I was saying, that's it. Then I'm back on the horse, and no one's going to stop me now. And then the next day we went out, and I had 2 first places by a long way. And I remember I was about a minute ahead, and I was still going upwind, and my legs were killing. It was 25 knots, and I was just punching my legs, going, "Don't you dare stop! Don't you stop!" Yeah, and I remember there, I was just like, and then I was watching Pavlos. He was so far back in it, because I could have won the regatta before the medal race, and he was a long way back, and he hit the right-hand side, which wasn't working that day up the second beat in one of the races. And this would decide if I won it with a day to spare. And I think he went from like 18th, and he caught up to a 7th or something by the finish, and he got within striking distance, which meant there was a medal race. And he was just able to pick the win so well at that event. And it was. But I knew that I was mentally there, and so leading into the medal race, I was going to be pretty tough to stop.
What do you remember about that medal race?
I remember it was a good position. I remember there's one thing in sailing, which is it's a tricky one, where you can affect other people's results, and Pavlos couldn't lose second place, which it sounds, because I am so ruthless and I'll do anything to sort of win and be on the top. But I love match racing, and I was super confident in my skills, but I didn't want to put him off the podium for someone who sailed so well. And so the thing is, if he can lose second place overall, and I match race him and push him back off the podium or something, it's something it didn't sit well with me. Paul Goodison, we mentioned it before, but he went after Rasmus Miergren, who was 18 points behind him in Beijing, and that was a ruthless display. And as we've been talking about, people like myself, Paul Goodison, we'll do anything, and we've got that spirit that will make sure we cross every T and dot every I, that to make sure you win. But I remember that sat really badly with me. I remember as Rasmus Miergren, he was 18 points behind Paul Goodison into the last race, and so mathematically, if Rasmus won and Paul came last, he could overtake him and take the gold medal. And Paul Goodison just went for him on the start and put Rasmus from 2nd overall to 6th overall in the event. And I remember Rasmus coming up after the race, bringing his boat up the thing and crying, and he was just saying, "I wish I was 1 point further back." So he's 19 points behind, and Paul Goodison didn't have to match race him, and he could have, because I just wanted a chance to win a medal. So when my situation came along and I saw that Pavlos couldn't lose second place, that was really great for me. It meant I could go and do my thing, and he's still going to walk away with a silver medal. And yeah, it put me in a great position where I was like, okay, I get to match race, I get to do my thing, and I was confident in my skills, and I think Pavlos had to beat me by 7 places, so I just had to stick close to him and make sure I didn't make any stupid mistakes.
Which you didn't. I mean, what was that moment like, Tom, crossing the line, knowing that you'd finally won the gold medal?
Yeah, it's again, listening to your podcast, you hear Ian Percy and Ben Ainsley and the feeling they had. And it's exactly the same with me. We all say it. It's relief. It's this feeling of the weight of the world on your shoulders just being taken off. And I was just, I remember just sort of feeling like that's it. And for me, it's a feeling like it's over. Like all this head down, pushing so hard for so long. Because for me, it was September 2000 when I dedicated my life to the Olympics after leaving and watching the final race of the laser class in the Sydney Olympics. I went home that day and started training to become an Olympic gold medalist. And so it was a sort of a 12-year journey, and it just felt like the weight was off, and I just took this huge backpack off my shoulders, and that backpack was a lot heavier after Beijing, and it just felt like I could relax now, and I sort of set out to do what I wanted to do, and amazing feeling. You're live on air with the Prime Minister, and I told her to call back another time. When you're finished in the Olympic arena, you look back and you do anything to have that feeling again. The Olympic gold medal for me, nothing will ever touch it because of the journey.
We'd been filming the games, but we'd also been filming every night down at the Cove, which is a lovely little pub at the corner of Chesil Beach, and the Aussie media had completely taken over the place, hadn't they? I mean, what are your memories of that night when you could finally relax and there was such a great Aussie atmosphere there?
Yeah, it was. We were very fortunate that we sort of made this pub in Weymouth our own, and all our friends and family were able to come there and meet. It's obviously a blur, as you well know. It's once you finish, you come back, you celebrate, you come back to shore, and you've got tons of media to do. Then they go, okay, you've got 5 minutes to have a shower and get in your Olympic tracksuit. You got to get to the medal ceremony, and you do that, and you come back, and it's more media, and it's a blur. But I do remember walking into the Cove and this pub and walking up, and I remember there being a lot of people saying, "Oh, you got to wait here," and just wait. We're just getting everything ready for you. I said, "What do you mean? It's just our friends and family, isn't it?" Like I was thinking maybe 50 people or something like that who had flown over, and I didn't really realise the scene as I walked in. There's people. The whole Cove Inn was packed. There's people everywhere. It was all over the grounds next to us. There's people on roofs. For us in Australia at the Australian Olympic team at that time, we were not having a great run. We'd had a lot of medals, but no gold medals. And I think I was the first individual gold medalist to win. And so it was sort of a big deal for the Australians. And yeah, I was fortunate to get that. And but yeah, walking in and seeing everyone there and celebrating, and it's crazy that night. I think I had a call with our Prime Minister. I was doing so many media interviews over the phone in Australia, and they handed me the phone again, and I couldn't really hear who it was as our Prime Minister, Julia Gillard, saying, Hi Tom, congratulations. And I apparently I just said, I had a few drinks at this stage as well. It's 11 p.m. at night. And I just said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Call back soon. Call back." And I just handed the phone back to our PR manager and said, "I can't hear them." And I just said, "Anyone got my beer?" And I walked off, and they came back and grabbed me. And they go, "Do you know who that was?" I was like, "You're live on air with the Prime Minister," and I told her to call back another time. But so it's all a bit of a blur that night. But she called back, and I was a lot more polite and apologised, but it was just very hard to hear.
It was the highlight of our games. It was great fun. A little bit of Australia at the end of Chesil Beach. It was good. Tom, you won gold for a very proud sporting nation. How did that Olympic gold medal change your life?
Yeah, it changes your life for the better. There's no doubt. It just gives you a bit of confidence. And Ian Percy, again, sorry to bring back your podcast, but I love listening to these. I love listening to athletes' podcasts and talks. And Ian Percy says that you walk into a room and you've sort of got an air about you and people sort of notice you that you are a gold medalist and things like that. And it does open doors. But yeah, I think it doesn't really change you at all, but it's nice giving you that confidence that if you set your mind to something, no matter what it is, I I'm not the most athletically gifted person. And when I started training and sailing, I was not a good junior sailor. I wasn't. I think before I started, before the Sydney Olympics, when I dedicated myself to it, I finished 61st at the Radial Nationals in 1999. I was mediocre. I never did well in junior sailing, but I said, I love this sport. I want to do it, and I'm going to train and put in the work. And I just felt like a regular kid from up north in New South Wales, and I wasn't from a city or anything like that. And I just loved it and dedicated myself to it. And yeah, I did believe I could be the best in the world, but to actually achieve that on all, whether it's world titles or Olympic, tick off Olympic gold medal, it's just such a confidence thing that you can do anything you want in life, really.
Well, Tom, since then, of course, you've had plenty to keep you busy, but you didn't defend your Olympic medal. I mean, how much do you miss the Olympic atmosphere?
I really miss the Olympic atmosphere. Those memories of walking into the opening ceremony in Beijing, I remember, even though I was a sick boy in Beijing, there's pictures of me how skinny I was. But I still remember that. I still remember being in the tunnel, walking out into an Olympic opening ceremony, and all the countries are cheering, singing your national song. It might not be a national anthem, but you're sort of, whether it's for us, I think we're in the tunnel singing Waltzing Matilda, and every country is trying to outdo the other one, sing above the other one, and out loud the other team and intimidate other teams. And those are the memories that when I'm retired from sport, or even now, when you're finished in the Olympic arena, you look back and you do anything to have that feeling again, and you can never replicate it. And no matter how hard you try, but it's something that's unbelievable and sticks with me. And I didn't come back to Olympic after the 2012 Olympics. I went into the America's Cup, and I sort of, I set out to win a Olympic gold medal, not 5. And I sort of feel like I achieved what I wanted to do. And I know that doesn't sort of, whether I could have won more, who knows? But B, people like Ben Ainsley and that are my heroes, and what they did is unbelievable. But I just sort of felt like I'd ticked the Olympics off, and I wanted a new challenge. And I've been doing that ever since, really, because then I went to the America's Cup and we won one and we lost one. But then when Sail GP came up, I said, this is a new exciting challenge, something to do. And I kind of like moving through my career and not getting stuck in one thing. I won the Moth Worlds last year, and going from the slowest boat in the world to the fastest boat, I love that evolution and being able to change my skills and learn new skills. And so for me, the Olympics it's still the highlight of my career and highlight of my life. But I'm still enjoying new challenges now, and I do regret not coming back for another Olympics, but I also understand exactly why I didn't, and accept it. But very fond memories of those times.
Well, as we've said, Tom, when we can make it work, we'd love to have you back on the podcast to talk about the rest of your career. But maybe one last question until then. I mean, as you've said, you've achieved the ultimate in sailing. You've stood on the podium and held the America's Cup as an integral part of that 2013 Oracle team. But you've also stood on the top step in Weymouth, singing your national anthem, watching your national flag flying. How do those two very special moments compare for Tom Slingsby?
Yeah, I get asked this question a lot of times. I guess, the simple answer is nothing will ever beat my Olympic experience, and the highs and the lows of it is what makes it what it is. I think if I went and won my first Olympics in Beijing and then one in Weymouth, I don't think I'd have as fond of memories of the journey. I went through the absolute lows of competitive sport, being a favourite at your pinnacle event and all the pressure in the world on you, and you choking in front of the world to see. There was an article before the Beijing Olympics. It was I think it was Inside Sport or something. It was people to bet your house on. Tom Slingsby at $1.10 to win the Olympic gold medal. And so when I went out there and the whole of Australia are watching me going, this guy's apparently a shoo-in, no one's going to beat him. And I got flogged. So the lows of that were so low. And then to come back and it made the high so high. So the Olympic gold medal for me, nothing will ever touch it because of the journey it took to get there. And then the America's Cup for me is just another great memory. I mean, to have that experience in that event in the America's Cup, in the circumstances we did it, to be in a cockpit with Ben Ainsley as he's making these decisions to help us get back into it and to work with him and to collaborate with him and Jimmy and our whole team on how we're going to make the boat faster, how we're going to tactically not make mistakes. Because if we made one tactical mistake, we're going to lose this $150 million campaign and lose the America's Cup. And just how we orchestrated that I've got such fond memories of that as well. And but it's for me it's pretty obvious. The Olympic gold medal is my highlight of my career. But I'm fortunate I've had some really good times.
Tom Slingsby, thank you for sharing your story and for being so honest. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Laser gold medalist from 2012, Australia's Tom Slingsby. We mentioned there the wonderful scenes at the Cove, the small pub on Chesil Beach that was home to the Aussie sailing team throughout London 2012. A place we'd find ourselves most evenings post-sailing, filming winners' interviews with the very successful Australian sailing team. I've been very fortunate with my Olympic sailing career in that once the sailing was over, I had already moved into broadcasting. And so from Beijing onwards, I've hosted the BBC sailing coverage from on the water at the Games. It's a wonderful job, a real privilege in many ways, reporting live from the different courses as the day's events unfold. It's exciting, but it can be emotional. In 2012, we watched as Hannah Mills and Saskia Clark desperately tried to hold on to a very hard-fought top spot in their 470 medal race. They finished with a silver medal. A story that, as you'll hear, drove them on as they decided to go the distance one last time in Rio. We joined Hannah at home in Poole, England, and we kicked things off asking about how she'd been dealing with the postponement of the Tokyo Games.
I'd sort of prepared myself for it, but still when it came, it hit me really hard, actually, harder than I thought, even though I'd been able to prepare. I think Nick was with me and I just sort of burst into tears because I'd sort of had so much planned beyond Tokyo and I was going to retire after Tokyo, and you know, that final push, the final sort of 6 months building up to Games is so full on. You're putting everything into every single day and you're so emotionally sort of invested at that point. And yeah, for it to move, it was a big deal. So yeah, it was pretty emotional, and I definitely had some ups and downs for a good couple of weeks trying to process it all.
Oh, I can imagine. I mean, by April, I mean, you can see the finish line. It's just a few months to go, and you know, so focused for that time period. I mean, what does the next 12 months look like? What impact has it had on the campaign?
Yeah, I mean, as an athlete, again, you have to look at the positives. Obviously, it gives us another year. Our campaign as a pair, myself and Ailey McIntyre, is quite new. Like, we've only been together for 3 years campaigning. So there is so much more we can do given that extra year. So you definitely look at that and go, okay, let's restructure where our priorities are, what we're going to sort of focus on for the next couple of months. But ultimately, it's just so uncertain. I guess there's no confirmation of events. You know, we've definitely got the mindset that other than coaches regattas, we might not do any official events till the Olympic Games, which seems completely mental. But yeah, you just sort of think of all the likely scenarios and sort of figure out how you're mentally going to cope with them and still get the best from what is an amazing thing to be able to do, which is campaigning for an Olympic Games. So pretty uncertain. We know we're going to be in the UK for the next month or so, and see how things progress abroad and see whether opportunities to kind of travel and find some foreign sailing partners opens up.
Let's go back to 2012. The London Games, your home games. It felt like the whole nation had gone Olympic mad, and a young, fiery 24-year-old Hannah Mills looked like she was soaking up every moment. What was it like, the euphoria of a home games and the expectation that came with it?
Yeah, London, it seems like a lifetime ago. It was honestly the most insane, incredible thing to be a part of. I can't believe how lucky I was to sort of be at the right time in my career to just, and I mean literally just, be able to qualify and go to London. And it was like that. It was just such a buzz, such a circus from the off, sort of since we qualified September 2011. That whole run up to the games and then the games themselves was just a whirlwind of amazing things happening all the time. And to do it with Saskia Clark, my teammate, who'd been to Olympic Games, who had so much experience, and our coach, Joe Glanfield, as well, who had all that experience, just let me enjoy it and sort of be who I needed to be and roll with the sort of circus that was happening, but also keep me on the ground and keep me focused on the important things that we still needed to get right to be able to perform. It was incredible.
There was a massive amount of expectation. I mean, I even remember my first Olympics, everyone around me thought, of course, that I was going to win a gold medal. But I can imagine in London at a home games just down the road from here, there must have been, a massive expectation for you to deliver.
Yeah, there definitely felt that for sure. And for me, this was my first games. I was in a team with Ben Ainsley, Ian Percy, Andrew Simpson. It was insane. I couldn't believe that I was in a team going to Olympic Games with these people. And they expected to win for sure. And that definitely rubbed off on us. It was, right, well, we're here and we're going to try and win. Okay, cool. Let's do that. And I think that was really positive for me because I love pressure. I love that feeling of people expecting, and even though it makes you feel sick and nervous and all those sort of feelings that you kind of want to run away from, it makes you feel alive. And I definitely felt that as this is massive. This is way beyond anything I could have dreamed of as a kid of being a part of, and let's just go and smash it and let's go and enjoy every moment and deliver the best performance we possibly could.
Thousands of Olympic athletes go a lifetime without competing at a home games. And we recently spoke to Ben Ainsley about whether it was a massive distraction or a huge motivation. How did it affect you?
It's a huge motivation for me, definitely. Ever since it got announced 7 years before that the London Olympics was going to happen, that was it. That was all I cared about. That was all I was working towards. And that whole London Olympic cycle, it never looked particularly likely that I was going to go, just for various reasons. I hadn't got that much experience. I was struggling to find a crew who I'd sort of gelled with. And so I just felt like I was clawing on, gripping on to this dream that was sort of disappearing. And then my sort of opportunity opened up and I just grabbed it and ran with it.
You really delivered in, I guess, what was familiar Weymouth conditions. Your first Olympic Games, and in the medal race, you were there with a real shot at gold. You must have felt like your regatta had gone pretty well.
Yeah, I think definitely looking back, we set out of our skins to enter that medal race, pretty much tied for first place and with no one able to beat us for the silver medal. And I'm really proud of that, obviously, but I still can't quite let go of that medal race and how we approached it, how in hindsight approached it differently, and how we just basically watched the gold medal sort of sail away, and there was nothing we could do about it. And that Noath course where we raced for the London medal races was particularly tricky course, like most medal races courses, and it was heartbreaking actually. I was so devastated to feel. Well, I guess at an Olympic Games, you might never get the chance again to be in that place where you could win a gold medal. And I just felt like that was our shot and maybe we'd blown it. And my whole family was there watching. And yeah, it was, I just felt like I'd let everyone down. And I was pretty broken for quite a while after that.
I remember interviewing you live on the BBC just after you crossed the finish line, and you were massively disappointed, almost angry with what had happened, and I guess angry with yourself.
Yeah, definitely. I think as athletes, you put so much pressure on yourself to perform, and I just felt like so many people had put so much into our campaign, and I just felt like we could have done better, and we had more to give as a team, and in that moment it didn't come together, and I was really angry. I was really frustrated. I was really gutted, sad, so many sort of negative emotions, and luckily Sas was there to hold me whilst I burst into tears, and we just had that sort of moment where I remember she just had her arm around me and I was crying. She was telling me it was okay and we should still be obviously amazing, super happy that we'd got the silver medal and stuff. But yeah, I guess I'm so competitive. I just wanted to win, and I'd always dreamed of having the anthem played, the British anthem played, and standing on the top step of the podium at an Olympic Games. And yeah, obviously you just think, well, we're not going to be at home games again. So that moment's gone.
At any stage after winning that silver medal, did you feel, I guess, any satisfaction with what you and Saskia had achieved?
Yeah, 100%. And I think, we did a whirlwind 18-month campaign. I think we started sailing together 3 months before the first part of the Olympic trials, and we felt we really had our backs against the wall. There was another team performing really well, medaling at international regattas. And yeah, we put so much into that 18 months, and we came so far in such a short space of time, from sort of our first regatta where we think we finished 13th to then after that point, I don't think we missed a medal at an international regatta the whole way up. We won the Worlds a couple of months before the Games. We were just really consistent, and I wouldn't put that down necessarily to our sort of starting or our first up wins. I felt like we were the comeback queens. We just fought tooth and nail every single race. There was so much passion in our performance, and it was an amazing 18 months, and there was so many positives from it for sure.
How fueled by the frustration of London was the build up to Rio, and how much more determined were you?
Yeah, it was massively, massively fueled by that feeling of missing out and of not winning. I think we focus so hard on trying to enjoy the journey because the Games is such a sort of thing in the future and a pinnacle, and there's no guarantees. But certainly that last sort of couple of months, we were so meticulous, so much more sort of focused on the detail and sort of different scenarios and preparing mentally. I think in London, I definitely just rode off of youth and excitement and just the buzz. And for Rio, I definitely rode off of caring about my mental preparation a lot more and sort of the athlete I needed to be in different scenarios. And so I just think we were just so much more prepared for whatever life threw at us in the build up to Rio. And it was such a different Olympic Games as well. Like the feel was so different. We'd gone from this home Olympics where, we'd gone to the opening ceremony up in London, had the most incredible time there, seen some incredible athletes, just had this mental experience to Rio where, it was a lot calmer. There was a lot less of a buzz. It was a very different size Olympic Games. We didn't go to the opening ceremony for various reasons. And I guess we were so much more about the performance at Rio, whereas London, we were more about enjoying London.
As you say, not your home games, of course, far from it, but Rio brought a load of other distractions. There was much chat in the build-up about water pollution, sailors getting sick, muggings, and the tricky, unpredictable conditions. How do you approach racing surrounded by all that noise? How much of a lottery do the games become in certain conditions?
Yeah, you just don't let it affect you, really. There's so much you can't control with the water pollution, with the safety stuff. And we just knew that Team GB and the British sailing team were so on it. They were so professional that all of that noise, I guess we'd call it, would just be dealt with. And we knew we could just focus on our performance. And that's an incredible position to be in at Olympic Games. So we didn't, we went through certain scenarios of what ifs and if this happened, what would we do? But we didn't waste too much time getting distracted by that. And we, as I said, we were just so about our performance and what we could control and what we could get right, and preparing mentally for situations out of our control, but not wasting too much time on them. Maths is not Joe's strong point. We have no idea if he's got this maths right. We're going to make the most of this because this is it. We're not going to be told what to do. Every Olympic Games, the 1st of January that year is when I flick the switch.
Well, as the week unfolded, it was once again a battle between you and New Zealand for the gold. And by the finish of the penultimate race, you'd mathematically done enough to secure the gold. What do you remember of that race finish? Way down the bay, away from most of the cameras, no fanfare of the medal race. Do you remember that time, almost that private moment between you and Saskia, the moment of realisation that you'd done it?
Yeah, I do. God, it just brings me so much happiness thinking about it. So clearly, I think. Yeah, we knew going into that last race, the maths, as you said, and I do remember going down the final run and the two boats, the New Zealand girls and the French girls who were in the mix that could potentially beat us if certain scenarios happened. We were battling it out and we crossed the finish line. We'd let the French pass, but we'd kept the New Zealand girls behind us or something. And we crossed the finish line. I just remember thinking, maths is not Joe's strong point. Oh my God, we have no idea if he's got this maths right. And I just had this moment of, okay, Joe. And he zoomed over and he was really confident and he sort of had it all in front of us. And it was only then that I could kind of believe that we'd done enough to mathematically secure the gold. And yeah, just the relief. I mean, you must have felt it too, the relief that you've finally done it. And that incredible moment, we got on your boat and we had the music playing, we were dancing and Nick was out there. And it was just such a unique sort of 20 minutes of us celebrating basically with the people closest to us, Joe and Nick and you guys out there who've been with us through so much. It was insane. And it definitely sort of released a lot of emotion before we came back on shore as to what we'd actually finally achieved. And I think I was just about sort of ready to see my mum by the time we got in because I'd sort of had that release. So yeah, it was really, really special. But I do remember then quite quickly after we'd got ashore thinking, actually, it's only 20 points. What if something breaks on that? And I just had that irrational/rational fear. And me and Joe went into this world of anxious panic for 2 days until we'd got the gold medals around. Sas was like, woohoo, yes, totally yeah, we've done this. And me and Joe were just with each other panicking the whole time, thinking about X, Y, and Z that could happen, that could stop us winning gold. So yeah, I definitely was one of those people that until I had that medal around my neck, I didn't quite believe it was mine.
It was certainly one of our favourite Olympic moments. I mean, it was there was no one else in the bay, and we kind of held you back to do a live into the BBC in London, and our crazy Portuguese rib driver cranked up the dance music, and the pair of you were jumping up and down in our boat. It was a special moment we won't forget either. And it's something that's really changed since, I guess, I was wearing the Team GB tracksuit, and that's the medal haul. I mean, Britain has developed into a medal-making machine, hasn't it? I mean, your medal in Rio was one of 27 golds. How competitive is it between the sports to get their medalists airtime and national recognition? I mean, I know as a BBC correspondent, I'm passionate about trying to give sailing its moment in the sun. We're not in TV all that often, are we? So it certainly feels like every day we're selling hard to get you slots, for the sport. And I remember having a chat with you about how to make the most of your medal race opportunity the next day. Is there a frustration at all that sailing doesn't always get its athletes the publicity that perhaps other sports generate?
Yeah, it's a really good, challenging question, that one. I think there is a frustration, definitely, because I think we see kids now coming up through sailing and how much sailing's brought to us as people, and And, forget the Olympics, it's just an incredible sport for a young person to get the opportunity to do. And with things like the Andrew Simpson Sailing Foundation now and UKSA, and there's so many sort of great charities out there to help get kids on the water, that you just think if sailing had more time and more opportunity, more people would see it and seek out these opportunities and have that just incredible feeling and moment of going out on the ocean with the elements in a boat, often getting the chance to steer a boat. And like even that one-off experience for somebody can change their life. And I just think that that's a real shame that because our sport doesn't get so much airtime, a lot of people probably miss out on seeing what it is and what it can give to people. So yeah, that's probably the biggest gripe for me, is that reason. But yeah, it's a big challenge, and I think we're slowly getting there. Obviously, there's so many challenges with making it viewable in terms of it's quite complicated as a sport, and the analytics and all the technology coming through, and things like SailGP and the America's Cup, how they're starting to do things, and hopefully that technology will filter down and to make it more accessible and more viewable, and things like YouTube and stuff really help with that. So it's slowly getting there, but I completely agree with you. I think it is a challenge, and it is something that I'm, like you, passionate about trying to get sailing to more people, because it can really touch people and really change people's lives.
There's a lovely picture of you and Saskia on the podium, and you're a lot shorter than her, so you're cuddled into her shoulder. I mean, how special did it all feel, winning gold like that? Yeah, it was insane. It was totally insane, and the backdrop in Rio was just stunning, wasn't it? With Sugarloaf Mountain there behind the podium, and Guanabara Bay, and it was just incredible place. And yeah, we just, our whole Olympic journey, I think we just loved that moment, and we, I remember we just running around the crowd and just taking it all in, not quite sticking to the rules of walking regimentedly together. We just I remember running to see my mum and friends and stuff before jumping on the podium. And yeah, it was cool. We were just we're going to make the most of this, because this is it. We're not going to be told what to do, and we're just going to soak it up and enjoy it and go a bit crazy. And yeah, standing on the podium was just the most bizarre. I remember in London standing on the podium and just filled with this because there was someone on the higher step and not having our anthem played, and that moment of we're on the top step, I'm with Sass, one of my best mates. We've done it with our coach Joe, who's been there the whole time. Yeah, you can't even describe what that means. It's incredible, and yeah, Sass has always been there, arm around me. That's just kind of how we are even today, which is pretty cool. There was some chat about retirement after Rio. It didn't last long. I mean, you seemed to be searching for something to do, and then obviously came back to the sport for one more try. How hard was that decision, whether to come back for Tokyo or not? Yeah, well, I knew Sass was going to retire after Rio, and at that point I just didn't want to do it with anyone else. I think we'd had such an amazing time together, and we were such good mates, and I just always knew it would be a bit different if it wasn't with Sass. And I thought, I've done 2 Olympics with 1 gold, what a moment to retire on. But definitely when you take some time and step back and think about it, and think about the opportunity of going to Olympic Games and how special it is. And I was still fit and healthy at that point in time, and I guess I still felt I had more to do and more to learn. Sailing's a sport you never stop learning. And I also really felt strongly that this new passion had awoken within me about sustainability and plastics and that kind of thing. And I knew that as an athlete with a voice, going to Olympic Games, hopefully, you've got more platform to speak about things like that you're passionate about. And so that was also quite a big driving factor for me, was what else can I use my Olympic journey to talk about and raise awareness for. So yeah, I relatively quickly came to the decision that I wanted to go again, and I wanted to try and win another Olympic gold medal. As we've discussed, you've another year now to wait, but I'm guessing This time next year, we may well be interviewing you again about the prospect of becoming the most successful female Olympic sailor. How do you feel about that extra year of preparation and I guess the expectation of delivering that?
Yeah, it definitely makes me feel a bit sick, I think, probably is the overriding feeling, because, you know, I'm always one of those people that I definitely like peaking and building up for something. And every Olympic Games, the 1st of January that year is when I sort of flick the switch to, right, this is the last journey for this Olympic Games. And so obviously I did that, and then it got postponed. And so it's hard to reset that, I guess, and to not think about it and feel a bit nervous and, oh my God, we've got to wait another year. So yeah, overriding feeling is a little bit sick and definitely nervous, because it's such a big thing and there's no guarantee. As I said, there's no guarantees in sport ever. And it's a new team that I'm sailing with, as I said, Ailey McIntyre, and yeah, there's so much to think about and do, and I guess you know how much it takes out of you as a person and how much you give up. And yeah, I guess it's so full on, basically, an Olympic campaign, and that last 6 months is so full on, to get to a point where you think you've got everything in place and you think you're on that sort of final journey for it to get taken away and moved. It really is hard as an athlete, and you can totally appreciate how hard that must be. And but at the same time, you sort of try and check yourself, and you go, yeah, but what else? Look at what else is going on in the world, you know. And it's a crazy place, and there's no guarantees about anything. So then you think, we'll just live every moment, enjoy every moment, and appreciate what we've got and how lucky we are to be a part of something so cool as an Olympic Games. And that extra year is just another year to enjoy that and to take everything we can from it. And yeah, very lucky.
It's difficult for everybody, isn't it? I guess not knowing really the shape of this next year either. What would it mean, Hannah, to go to Tokyo, as you say, with a brand new team and actually deliver to make it happen?
I mean, it'd be insane, wouldn't it? I think our coach Joe's so level-headed and so big picture, and you know, he points that out stuff to us all the time, and things like, I don't think anyone's ever gone to back-to-back Olympics with different crews and won twice. So what, you know, he puts into perspective what we're trying to do, and you know, it's massive and it's hugely challenging. But I love that. I love challenging things like we all do, and yeah, Ailey has been phenomenal. You know, she kind of reminds me of me in London. She's so motivated, so just loves everything about the Olympics and laps it all up and is so passionate, and that's really cool. That gives me energy. And so I think we're under no illusions how hard it's going to be, but at the same time, we're both willing to put in the work and do everything we can so that we at least end that Olympic Games no matter what, knowing we couldn't have done more. And I think that's all you can ever ask, really, of a team and of yourselves and of each other. So, yeah, and ultimately then you can live with it, whatever the result. But to win would be phenomenal.
Hannah Mills, 470 class Olympic silver medalist in London and gold medal winner in Rio. Our next interview is with one of the trailblazers of Olympic sailing, a multiple medalist from 3 Olympics in the 1960s and 70s, and an inspiration to several generations of Olympic athletes. But Rodney Pattisson is far more than a talented sailor. Along with Denmark's Paul Elvström, Rodney was one of the first Olympic sailors to really delve deep into his campaign, to theorise and optimise, running a no stone unturned approach that's vital in the modern Olympic world. But he was doing it in the 1960s. Rodney sailed the 2-man Flying Dutchman class, the FD, a one-design dinghy but with a wide scope for innovation and development, an area in which Rodney excelled. We interviewed him at his home in Poole, and I started by asking about the situation competing in Olympic sailing as an amateur. Rodney is the son of an accomplished World War II naval pilot, and wanted himself to fly planes, but instead ended up in the Navy as a submariner, a role he then attempted to dovetail with his Olympic aspirations.
I was serving on a submarine, and the only thing was that hopefully at weekends the submarine would come into Gosport, because that's where it was based, and then I could get down to the Hamble and get my FD out. But during the week I was serving officer, and we were going out and diving off. It was a training submarine, diving off St Catherine's Point and so on, doing my job as a naval officer. But of course it was clashing, and I could just spend one day at sea in a submarine and dive and come back feeling, I'd lost a certain degree of fitness already, breathing the filthy air and so on and whatever. So that it was only towards, the very end that before Acapulco, a month before, that the Navy said, well, it's too close to the games now, you better, we'll take you out of the boat completely and find someone else to do your job. So, but we weren't being paid to sail, basically, like it's happening now, with UK sport and whatever. It's a totally different ballgame. But of course, all the money's there for it, the sponsorship and all that. We weren't allowed to have more than a certain label on our sail. Any more than that, we were professionals. But it was the same for everybody.
Rodney, along with Paul Elvstrom, you're credited with bringing a leap in professionalism into the world of winning sailing medals. When you looked at the challenge of winning gold, how did you go about it? What was your approach?
Well, I was in an Olympic class at that stage. There were only two dinghies, of course, the Finn and the Flying Dutchman, and I was too light for a Finn. Basically, I felt I had the ability as a sailor to possibly win, but I needed to have more boat speed than anybody else, and also eliminate breakages, because the thing about the Dutchman class was that whenever it blew, somebody broke something, and and invariably, failed to win the race because they'd broken something. And so it became a bit of a game of, when something went wrong and you did break something, to ensure that that never happened again. So I not accept it as bad luck, it broke. But why did it break? And let's make sure it can't possibly break again. So I think in the end, my boats became more reliable than others at not breaking things. And of course that produced results. No one was into really keeping fit, except possibly Ian and myself. And Ian didn't like running and jogging, but he preferred to swim. And I often thought, well, I wonder how fit that's keeping him. But I guess it was. But I used to jog. And I always did that, and I felt that if you were mentally fit, if you were physically fit, you were mentally fit, and you'd make more sensible decisions during a race or whenever. For sure, when I got out to Acapulco and with my, sailing against the rivals I'd been sailing against in Europe, some of them just couldn't cope because the weather was too hot and they were just, hopeless. Whereas we were both very fit, and I think that made a difference. I'm sure it did.
I mean, all through your Olympic career, you were known as a real technical innovator, the boat to watch. What lengths did you go to keep your innovations a secret till it was too late for anyone to respond? In Acapulco, what did you have up your sleeve?
Well, I wasn't, my boat initially wasn't a technical improvement over other people's boats. I mean, I had a Bob Hoare hull and everybody else had a Bob Hoare hull. By that time, they'd all realised it was fastest. But it was really, and I won I suppose I had a technical advantage over John Oakley in the trials in that I had a spinnaker chute in the boat. But that wasn't my idea. That was actually, it originated in Canada, I think, with the Green brothers who came and trained here. And he brought a chute with him and he said, look, Rodney, you ought to try this. But other technical advantages, I sort of, when I won the trials, I then had time, because the boat had to be shipped to Mexico and so on, and I thought, well, what can I do that will irritate the opposition and psych them out? So then I thought, well, what sort of things can I do? And that's when I came up with the trim tab centerboard as an idea. And got it made, but unfortunately I never used it. I had it in Acapulco and it got it measured, but it did cause a rumpus because people heard about it. I mean, other people were cutting up their spare centerboards to try and produce something similar, and in Acapulco you could hardly buy a suitable glue for gluing timber, let alone building a trim tab centerboard. But in the end, the jury came up with a rule which they invented, and I've never heard it ever since, was that it was considered, my centerboard, because of its ingenuity, I suppose, was considered an unfair advantage over poorer nations. And so they threw it out. Not that I was going to use it, I was going to pretend to use it. I was going to go out with it installed in my boat, and then because we had our rubber rib, I was going to change it to a conventional board, do the race with the conventional board, and then switch it back to the trim tab centerboard. Of course, I couldn't do that in the end. But
how professional was the British team set up then?
well, much more professional than anybody else. And we had David Houghton as our Met man, and we had our own rib, which we were allowed to use. All the other guys had to have it was something like nearly a 2-hour tow out to our racing area behind sort of Bertrand launches. And you know, in that heat, you can imagine by the time you got out to the race area, you were pretty sort of sunburnt and exhausted before you even started the race. Whereas we could get out there in about 15 minutes behind the rib, as long as it didn't break down.
Am I right in thinking that there was a team plane doing a reconnaissance for you?
Well, it wasn't a team plane. It was basically, Vernon had met this guy. I think he was probably having a drink at the Caletta Hotel. And I think he met this guy and he said, he was a pilot. He was for an American who owned this aircraft, and he's a keen sailor, and he said said to his owner he wanted to watch the sailing, and the owner said, well, I'm going on holiday that week, so you may as well have the aircraft. And by that time we twigged that we had a strange set of conditions in Acapulco, because unusually there was more wind than normal. Normally it was going to be no wind at all. There was more wind, and there were sort of frequent sort of storms in the late afternoon, and a lot of rain and water coming down through the rivers and flowing out into the Bay of Acapulco. And it was a different density of the water to the main stream outside. So you were getting patches of different coloured water in the bay, and then the dark blue patches of the main stream outside, and the current was different. So we realised this was important to have this information and to know it. And so Vernon persuaded this pilot to go out before the start of a race sketch it, because you could see the different colours, and then drop it down to our rib. And then we would be given a sketch of the different coloured water. And of course, that was, and this would be about sort of 10-15 minutes to go to the start. And it was useful information, if nothing else, you know. He certainly, it was nice to have him, and of course it psyched out the other people enormously.
Well, Rodney, after a difficult start, you more than dominated the opposition with 5 firsts and a second, the lowest recorded Olympic score ever. And at the tender age of 25, how did you feel when it had all come together? And there you were with Ian on the top step of the podium?
Well, it's such a long time ago, I've forgotten, but it was a great moment, that's for sure. You know, and it all happened on Trafalgar Day. Amazingly, the 21st of October. No, it was a wonderful moment, that's for sure. But I had to say, I mean, I was extremely grateful to the Navy for allowing me to do it, giving me the time. And that was all down to a certain admiral, famous World War II submariner who bargained with me and said, if you win the trials, I'll give you all the time you need to get to Acapulco, to go to Acapulco. And he kept his word and he did that.
Rodney returned from the 1968 Mexico City Games with a gold medal. 4 years later, he was back in the British team and heading to the 1972 Games in Munich. The sailing was held in Kiel on Germany's north coast. But just days before the regatta kicked off, Rodney's eligibility was severely questioned as a rival team contested his right to be there.
It was all an American, deliberate American act to try and psych me out, with 2 days to go to the first race sort of thing. And I do remember coming ashore after practicing, and Vernon sort of came down the slipway and said, "Oh, we've got a bit of a problem, Rodney." And I said, "What's that?" He said, "Your amateur status. These Americans have put in a protest against you because of various adverts that have appeared in American yachting magazines of you using graph speed." Well, I wasn't using graph speed by that time. I didn't have it on my boat in Kiel, but it had been on my boat 4 years before in Acapulco. And the American importer of graph speed paint, he didn't care a damn about the rules and regulations on advertising and losing your amateur status and so on. They just went ahead with this advert and printing my name and Chris Davis's name, or Ian's name actually, because they were basically talking about an Olympics 4 years before. But it was a deliberate ploy on their part. And fortunately we had evidence to show that I had written letters to Sanderson's and any company that had been using my name and Ian's name and the boat's name for advertising purposes, pointing out to them that it wasn't no longer allowed, you see. It was a change of rule. But of course, if they could use it to their advantage and just, stir it up, they would, and that's what they tried to do, but they didn't get anywhere. Got thrown out, fortunately.
Well, Rodney, you won easily in Kiel with a race to spare alongside your new crew, Chris Davies. Why did you win so easily, and how had you gained such an advantage over your competitors?
Well, it's in my book. I had a faster boat than anybody else, but I knew it. I'd found that out.
How did you keep it a secret, your new
well,
weapon?
Again, it's people didn't know I built another boat. They still thought it was the old one, and I kept that secret right up until including and after the games.
What lengths did you go to make sure that the new boat looked identical to the old one?
Well, had the same name on the side of the boat, the same colours. One of the things I did was that the boat, my slow boat that he built me, had a prang. And so there was a repair inside the boat that you could see in the varnish work, internal varnish work. So I copied that repair. And so anybody who had any suspicion at all looked underneath the stern deck, knew about the collision and thought it had to be the same boat. So that was a plus. Not that I was very thankful to Uli Lieboy over the collision in the first place, but in fact it proved useful in the end.
Rodney, your golden moment at the Munich Games was surrounded by tragedy, of course. The day you won, terrorist attacks at the Olympic Village in Munich saw the death of 11 Israeli athletes. What do you remember of that moment?
Well, not a lot, because we didn't know about it until we came ashore. And we came ashore sort of in a triumphant mood, really, because we knew we didn't have to race the last race, and we knew we'd won the gold. And it was then that, I don't know who it was told us, probably Vernon told us what had happened in Munich, and it was a terrible moment, obviously. Really and truly, after that, I just wanted to get out. None of us went to the closing ceremony in Munich. We were planning to, but we didn't. When we learnt what had actually happened at Munich, and was still happening at Munich, it was horrific. But we were shielded by that, because obviously we were in a different area, we were in Kiel, we weren't in Munich any longer. But no, it was a dreadful situation.
At just 29 years old, Rodney returned from Munich with his second gold medal. 4 years later, he led the British team out as the flag bearer at the opening ceremony of the Montreal Games of 1976. An unprecedented 3 consecutive gold medals was not to be, though. Rodney falling foul of the cutthroat nature of the Olympic racecourse.
As you know, I wound up with the silver in the end rather than the gold. It was my ambition to win the gold, and we were leading halfway through the series, but then things changed, unfortunately. Weather conditions changed too, actually, and we lost the gold. Fortunately, won the silver, but it was, consolation prize as far as I was concerned.
What happened, Rodney?
Oh, well, no, I had an incident with these Dutch twins who were not very popular, hated by everybody apparently, and they basically match raced against me, and tried to push me down the fleet because they knew they couldn't possibly win a gold medal by that stage, or win any medal. As it was, I scraped in to just get the silver and not end up with the bronze. But you see, the trouble was that you couldn't, there were no witnesses. There might have been in this day and age with jury boats around the place. They probably wouldn't have got away with it, you see, because you're on the race. The only people on the race course are the other competitors, and they're trying to win the race themselves, and they're not going to be looking around at things going on in other boats.
With that in mind, how different was the competitive racecourse in your day to the modern racecourse?
That's difficult for me to answer that question, because I haven't been involved in done any of the sort of latest manner in which the games is held, where you have all these damned races and they only last half an hour and whatever. I would hate that, and I feel sorry for these sailors that they're not being offered the racing we got, which was a race lasting 2 to 2.5 hours. You can have a reasonable start and not take any risks. You can use the wind shifts to your advantage, and and they're long courses, 2-mile beats, sort of thing, and it made a real race of it. And whereas now, everything so much hangs on the start, and then people get called over and whatever, and all right, they may be able to drop more races perhaps, but it's wrong. I don't think they may think it's better to watch, but that shouldn't be a reason, I don't think, for wrecking the sport as we know it and wrecking the racing as we know it. Wrong, I think. Not the answer at all. But you can't tell them that. They don't listen.
With 2 golds and a silver, Rodney had become the most successful British Olympic sailor of all time, an accolade he held on to until Ben Ainsley's 3rd gold medal, won in Beijing in 2008. Ainsley could have had to wait until 2012 to overtake Rodney, but going into the Moscow Olympics of 1980, the British sailing team decided to boycott the Games. It was a political decision, the result of Russia's 1979 invasion of Afghanistan, and it put an end to Patterson's Olympic hopes.
Well, it did, obviously, but we had no say in the matter. We were told it was going to happen, and the equestrian were told the same, and we just had to accept it. Interestingly, there were a lot of other countries boycotted too. We weren't the only ones, but we just had, we had no option. We just had to accept it. What I wanted to do was I wanted to go, and then I'd demonstrate in Tallinn itself, somehow or other, whether I wrote something on my mainsail with a magic marker or whatever. And I thought that might be a more effective way of showing one's disapproval than boycotting. But anyway, we had no option. Margaret Thatcher decided on that. Well, the athletes, of course, didn't agree and went. She recommended, I think, to the institutions like the RYA and the Equestrian Association that she recommended that we didn't send a team. And they agreed, and then announced that they wouldn't be sending a team. The athletes disagreed and said, "Sod you, we're going to go," and they went against the wishes of Margaret Thatcher.
Rodney, you went on to have much more success in other areas of the sport. But when much of your life was dedicated to the pursuit of Olympic success, you won 2 gold medals and 1 silver. What do those medals mean to Rodney Patterson?
Well, I suppose just a sense of achievement at a certain time in my life. Really, nothing else than that. But I suppose every 4 years when the Games comes round, you sort of reflect and think that it was quite an event really at the time, and maybe one didn't really realise it. I do remember, that when I went to the pre-Olympics in Acapulco the year before the Games, after the Worlds in Montreal, I suddenly began to realise that I was part of a team. To be honest, until then, I wasn't so much part of a team. I was an individual trying to get to the Olympic Games. And suddenly I realised in Acapulco I was part of a British team, But then I suppose, the Kiel, I realised I was part of a British team, and one couldn't get away from it. And not that I wanted to, but, and the same goes at Kingston. But difficult question, that one, actually, to answer.
It means a lot.
Yeah, of course it does. No, even though they're stuffed in a drawer somewhere, it's nice to know you've got them. But God knows what I'll do with them when I go.
Rodney Patterson, Olympic gold medalist in the Flying Dutchman from Mexico and Munich, and silver medalist from Montreal. A true sailing legend, and as you no doubt heard, a man very modest about what he achieved out on the Olympic racecourse. Thank you so much for listening in. It's been great bringing you these tales from the Olympic Games. 3 very inspirational athletes, all with their very own Olympic stories. And if you've liked what you heard, do give part 2 a listen. As I said at the very beginning of this edition, we've 3 more stories of Olympic dedication. From Santi Langer, Lynn Jules Shore and Blair Took. 3 very different athletes with 3 unique stories of Olympic success. I can't go without saying a massive thank you to all our Olympic sailing stars. Thank you so much to each of you for your time in doing this podcast. It's massively appreciated. And of course, a huge thanks to Tim at Vertigo Films. We've shared plenty of Olympic moments out on the water over the years. As ever, many thanks for all your hard work on this edition of the pod. That's it for this edition, but do tune in to part 2. And thanks again for listening. Sail safe, everyone.
This is Castle 1. Race officer speaking.
Flaps are coming here, checks are coming.
We're 1.5 below.
2 dives here, boys.
We're looking at 10.5 to 42.
This is Castle 1 standing by. Out.